Okay, Father Heinz, thank you for being with us today in this interview. Uh, you are just handing some days in Portugal, giving formation to the priests, to bishops, to the diocesan commissions, religious provincials. So, in the end of these days, looking back to what happened, what do you say about the way we are in Portugal, developing all that it's need to create a culture of care and safeguarding?
Yeah, I was very glad about the hospitality and the generosity also in organizing all this. It was very intense, I have to say, and I was very much impressed by two things. One, the people who I met, the participants in the different conferences, were very much aware of the necessity to work on safeguarding issues. They feel the urgency to do something for the victims, and they are prepared to commit to this work also in the future. Secondly, I saw on Saturday the highly motivated and highly competent people who are involved in the different diocesan commissions from all over Portugal, lay people, religious priests who are working in this and are willing to support the dioceses in their work. And this is very encouraging. However, on the other side, I would also say that from what I perceive is that Portugal is still at the beginning of reckoning with the past and acknowledging that there may be more abuse than has been known until now.
Regarding the past, like you just said, we don't have public knowledge of a lot of situations. I mean, I think, okay, nothing happened. It's difficult to believe that. So what can we do in terms of an active way, possibilities to give people the possibility to lead with their situations of abuse and talk about it? What you can do to help the victims that didn't talk yet to do it in a way that is good and integrative for them?
Okay, first and foremost, you need to create an atmosphere of trust, because people come forward talking about traumatizing experiences only if they feel safe enough. So one way is to communicate that you are welcome. Not only welcome, you are really taken care of once you decide to speak about this. Secondly, people need to know where to go to. In the diocese, in the religious congregations, they need to know who are the contact persons, how are they qualified as listeners, and what will they do with what they receive in terms of your sharing. However, there is also the experience from other parts of the world that this is not an automatism. People don't come forward simply because you advertise and you say, we are now listening to you. That will be also a gradual process. At least it has been so in many other parts of the world, where step by step people felt encouraged, especially also when they knew that there are more victims who also look forward to and are prepared to share their trauma, their grief, and their woundedness. Once that happens, then there will be more people who talk about their experience.
So it's not enough to have in a site, okay, we have here this contact, you can contact us. And from other countries and other experiences, what kind of proposal were until now more helpful in terms of this? What good examples we can see that help people to do this process?
I mean, it would be good to have a certain diversity of people who are available as those who receive the report. So men and women, people from inside the church, even priests, religious, and people from outside the church who have nothing to do with the church, because some victims prefer one group, others the other. Then it needs to be clear that what is being done with the report. Many victims don't want to get public. Some of them don't even want that their family knows about the abuse, or their friends, or the general public. So how do we deal with this confidentiality in such a setting? That needs to be clarified. And most of all, it needs to be a consistent communication of, we want to believe you, we want to receive your report, we want to help you on your journey, if possible, to justice, to healing, and to reconciliation.
Mm-hmm. And if you look to your knowledge around the world, where do you think some good examples of parts of the world where this process is going well? What kind of obstacles you can identify that don't allow this process to go through?
Okay, the good examples I see in Europe are, for example, the church in Austria and the church in France. In Austria, 11 years ago, the church established an independent commission, yes, appointed by the cardinal and the bishops' conference. There was a lady who is leading that commission, a former politician and a very well recognized and renowned person, but she had counselors from all sectors of society, from all political parties, from all religious persuasions, and she invited them to look into the reports. And all the reports that were received from all the dioceses in Austria went through that commission. And what the commission determined, in the sense of, this is a substantiated allegation, a true allegation, and this is the money, for example, or the support that we want to give in that case, was then sent to the bishops' conference, and then the bishops' conferences agreed to that proposal and went further with supporting that person, the former victim. In France, the bishops have decided a few years ago that they would establish also an independent commission, which has now started to work. And there is one important factor that I don't see very much in other parts of the world, in other bishops' conferences. The French bishops have a very spiritual approach to this, and they have agreed that for every plenary assembly that they start, they would read reports from abuse victims about their abuse and their expectations to the church for the next 5 or 10 years. They will read in every plenary assembly start such a testimony. So this is also something that shows you that they take it seriously, not only on an intellectual, on a juridical or a financial level, but also on a personal and a spiritual level.
Yeah. And in terms of taking this point of spiritual level, more than this situation in France, do you have any other examples of what we can do to take this as a conversion opportunity? Because sometimes people just said, we are too much about it, we are kind of, but this still is going in the people's lives. So what we can do as church to bring this to this spiritual and conversional level?
Yeah, I would say it is important for the church, it is also important for society. What I've discovered, especially over the last months, more and more, is that this is a human problem, this is an anthropological problem. And from what I have perceived and know about the Portuguese situation, especially in regard also to the cases from the Casa Pia some 12 years ago, 13 years ago, that there is a hesitation in society at large to talk about this, because this is a dirty topic. This is a very ugly face of humanity and okay, for the church, also for the church, of course. So we need also to see that there is a resistance that is very deeply ingrained in human beings, because, as you say in this Portuguese saying, as I have learned over the last days, you just put down your hat on your face so that you don't need to face your own face in the mirror. So you don't want to see reality as it is. And this is very much what human beings in general feel about this topic. And it is all the more in the church, because the church has ideals and proposals and a self-esteem and an esteem in society in general that is very high. Now, when it comes to what you really do and how far you are away from that ideal, then between ideal and reality, if there is such a gap, then we are scared, we are fearful, we are shameful, and the normal reaction is to push it away. So what we can do is to deal with that reaction, this automatic response, and it is important that we learn to deal with that visceral reaction to such a very difficult topic. John Paul II, 20 years ago, spoke about the necessary purification. Pope Benedict did it. Pope Francis did it. The popes over the last 20 years have over and over again called us to conversion with regard to how we deal with the past and how we listen to the victims of abuse, and how we commit to safeguarding so that people who are young of age and are vulnerable are protected and live in a safe space in our institutions, in our families, and so forth. There's one thing I would underline here is for how we come to a conversion. That is, once we realize that Jesus identifies with the victims of abuse, and when we listen to them, we listen to the voice of Jesus, who was an innocent victim of abuse and violence, then we can discover that this is not something that we can push aside, that we will get over ever. It will always stick with us because abuse has been since ever and will be there. What we need to do is to learn where God's voice, the suffering's voice, with whom God identifies in Jesus, is in the victims, and what they are, what He is asking us to do.
And I was hearing you talking about this anthropological dimension. I know that around the world and in your job, you sure are aware of it. There are already some consistent research about a kind of what might be risk situations in terms of religious life, priesthood life, that allow these things to happen. What are the most significant things we can say about the research and the lights it gave to us to identify the more risk factors in terms of religious and priest life?
Yeah, okay. In research and from experience, one can say that there are three things are important. One is the selection of candidates. There you have to be very careful who you take into the novitiate or into the seminary, in any kind of church position.
Schools and
teachers and kindergarten teachers and whatever. So be aware that you have a very clear and a clearly communicated selection and admission process. Secondly, in initial formation, so in novitiate, in juniorate, in theology studies and whatever, until profession or ordination, you should have elements of that kind of topic that are brought to the attention of those who go through formation in different ways, lectures, courses, workshops, retreats, whatever. It needs to become a normal topic, something that is not something very awkward, very shameful, but something you learn to talk about and you learn to deal with it. And finally, we have learned very much something surprisingly clear. The abusers who have been religious or priests were not young of age in religious life. They were not 25 or 30 normally. In the average, the abusers who were priests had the average age of 39, 40 years, which means it is also an issue of ongoing, of permanent formation of how people learn to cope with their workload, how they deal with their loneliness, what they do with the changes of midlife, how they continue to grow in spiritual life, because especially in diocesan priestly life, but also in religious life, there are changes that have come about, and where we thought that people will just go on and will be aware of the risks and will continue to grow, but this is not the case. And many priests for the diocesan world, but also religious, feel alone in this because they are not helped to really grow step by step, also with the challenges, with new responsibilities, with more work, with more loneliness, and so forth.
One point that we had the meeting this morning with the people that is in Europe for Jesuits are committed with safeguarding, and one question that was raised is that the priority of victims is clear, but at the same time, how we lead with the abusers in the church. What can we do for them to help them and not to allow them to, even independently of the penalization they have, canonical, civical law, what can a way we can accompany them to also to support the work they need to do to not be still as abusers.
Yeah, that is an important point, which also needs to be communicated well, because if we care for perpetrators, that is not because we want to hide or condone what they have done, but we want to make sure that they don't abuse again, which unfortunately happens quite often, that abusers who have abused once abuse more often, and they abuse even after having been to prison or having undergone therapy and so forth. So caring for perpetrators means also caring for prevention, for protecting children from further abuse. This is the general remark I would make. Then it is important to have a safety plan, to establish with this person, as long as you can work with the person, which means as long as he is under your jurisdiction, or you are responsible for the person, and the person cooperates with you, that there is a clearly established measure that you can meet only this kind of people. For example, you can't meet alone young people, you cannot go to certain places, you cannot go online freely, you have filters on your computer, you have to report what you have done every hour of the week to some person who supervises you for 3, for 5 years or whatever. So until you can be reasonably sure that the person is safe enough. But this presupposes that the person is, working with you, and some priests who have left religious life or priestly life, they go to other cities and you have no say. So that is one of the tensions in this kind of work, because we want to make sure that perpetrators who were priests or religious, when they abuse, don't do that, but that presupposes that they are working with us.
Because even when you have the more extreme penalizations in terms of canon law, that is losing the clerical state, in terms of symbolical, this is really strong, but to work with that person, then it's more difficult if they lost the clerical state.
Sure, and in most cases it will be impossible because they move away, you don't know where they are, and legally speaking, you are not responsible anymore. So this is the tension of, on one hand, we want this kind of punishment to happen because somebody who has abused a minor, as have said, for example, Pope Francis, should never work again in the pastoral area. However, that brings about the question, how can we take care so that they don't abuse again?
And speaking about canon law, we just have new changes in terms of canon law, namely that now the crime of abuse is a crime against dignity, and not only a failure in our responsibilities as religious man or woman. What kind of comments you would like to say about it?
Yeah, I think this is very timely that this has come about. The change that has happened officially yesterday will be effective, I think, later the year, brings in to the law of the Church all the changes that have been done in piecemeal work over the last 11 years, basically. So this is now all put into the textbook, the handbook, if you wish, and the law of the Church. And there we also have the framework that is necessary to really realize what is going on when somebody abuses. This is not just a failure against your professional and sacramental duties. This is against a crime against the dignity of persons, and this is very necessary.
One question that arises me is that if you felt that these pandemic times affected the process of creating safeguarding policies in the church, or even if bring more dangerous in terms of risks of abuse.
Now, the pandemic in general, I believe, has really been a setback for safeguarding work all over the world and in all societies, because what we realized is that in the moment when health is the main issue, health, economy, safety in general, then people look only on these issues, and everything else is secondary or tertiary. So the safety of children has been of very, very little concern for governments, for other institutions. Children have been basically forgotten by society. I think that in the church it was not as strong as in society at large, but we have seen that, of course, concern about church attendance, about how spiritual and liturgical services can continue, were at the forefront of the church authorities' interest. And unfortunately, the pandemic has also stopped the process of establishing diocesan commissions in some parts of the world, fortunately not in Portugal, where they were established, despite the fact that the pandemic was happening. But what was expected to happen from the law in 2019, that all dioceses in the world would establish commissions, certainly was impeded by the pandemic. What we know also in general is that the abuse online has risen to new levels, incredibly high levels, which are just frightening. And we know that online sexual material is produced and disseminated more widely over the last 18 months. We have concrete numbers that sexual interaction online solicited by adult people, for example in the Philippines or in other parts of the world, with children, have extremely increased, and this is very, very concerning, and we need to cope with a completely different dimension of abuse that came about over the last 18 months.
Mm-hmm. Just to recall one point you were saying, how far we are to all the dioceses in the world have a commission in terms of the Catholic Church?
I don't have numbers about that. I think, yes, we are, in many parts of the world, diocesan commissions have been established. I'm pretty sure that not in all. Basically, I would say in Europe, in North America, in many parts of southern Latin America, and some parts of Asia and Africa, the commissions are established, of course, in Australia. But in some parts where there is no public talk about safeguarding, and where there are major other concerns before and after the pandemic, like war, like natural catastrophes, the concentration is naturally focusing on other things, like, I mean, sheer survival or food or safety in general. So I think we are moving on, but of course, I'm not sure that we have 100% compliance with what was expected to happen in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm. And just to end, regarding your specific work in Gregoriana, the Child Protection Center, what you can say about the work you have been done the last years in terms of the interest, in terms of the more networks you are having now around the world, how this is going?
Yeah, we have had always the blended learning. So we offer some e-learning units, and we on safeguarding issues like how do you detect abuse, what do you do with victims, how do you confront perpetrators, and so forth. And we offer this to institutions, mainly academic and educational institutions worldwide in 6 languages, including Portuguese, who then supply also on-site training. We call this a blended learning approach. And especially over the last year and a half, we have received many more requests for the blended learning approach, because people have realized that online learning is a very good tool, not only in pandemic times, but also generally. Then we have established a diploma course, which is a 1-semester course in English and in Spanish, and we offer a 2 years licentiate, mestrado, in 2 years, an academic degree on safeguarding. And since we will become an institute on 1st of September, IADC, so Institute of Anthropology, Interdisciplinary Studies on Human Dignity and Care, so IADC, Institute of Anthropology, Dignity and Care, we also can offer a doctorate in anthropology with a special focus on the issues of dignity and care. And we are really looking forward to the new academic year, because we have a good number of students and applicants for these programs. We are very happy that some universities have also in the last weeks established new centers for the well-being or the protection of minors and of vulnerable persons, somehow in connection with us. For example, the Jesuit University in Lima in Peru, the Catholic universities in Lviv in Ukraine and in Zagreb in Croatia. And there are more and more people who work with us, like the Jesuits in India, the Jesuit University in Santiago de Chile, and the Jesuit University in Quito. So we would really hope that the Catholic University in Portugal or other Jesuit institutions would also work with us. We are available for that, and we hope that we will have also students at the Gregorian for this kind of program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very well. Obrigado, António.
Muito obrigado.
Obrigado.